So, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for agreeing to talk to me. I'm really grateful.
Oh, you're very welcome, Vanessa.
And I'd love if you could start off by just telling us, so what is it that you do that you love?
So I've had a fantastic career in public relations, starting out in events management, moving into the nonprofit sector, and then into agency life. And absolutely thrived and loved what I was doing in agency, the variety and the scope and scale of the clients that I was working on. I really, really enjoyed. But the hours were long and it was very demanding. So when I knew that I was having my first son, I had to really take a step back and figure out if that was a life that I could continue after I had a baby. And we're fortunate to have a year's maternity leave here. So during that year, I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do. And that's when I made the decision to start out on my own. And Momentum Communications was born.
And were there any fears or stuff that kind of came up, or did you get straight into momentum with it?
Oh, absolutely. I had all sorts of misgivings and questioning, whether or not this was the right thing. My biggest fear was how on earth was I going to get business? Business development wasn't something that I particularly enjoyed in my past life. And, being on my own, I knew that was something that I was going to have to do. But I took it a step at a time. I guess, first of all, I planned only to work 2 days a week. So I was just sticking my toe in the water. And I knew that if it didn't work out, I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to rely on my own salary completely. But those fears were there. How was I going to get business? And how was I going to manage this working 2 days a week and having my son at home with me for the other three and that sort of thing? And I have to tell you, there really wasn't a definitive business plan as to how I was going to do it. It was a lot of faith and relying on my network. And it really became clear to me at that point how strong a network in the public relations community I do have and that I've built over the years. For the first couple of years, for sure, my business was built on referrals from other public relations practitioners who were either too busy or some of them were going on mat leave, so I took on some of their clients. And just as a network, we supported each other with business and with some counseling now and then too.
It's so important, isn't it?
Vote.
Yeah, it keeps coming up, how important it is to have people around you that really support you.
I'm a very independent person, but it still helps to talk to somebody who is going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And for me, that was other PR consultants who had young children at home.
Yeah.
And I think what we figured is that none of us know exactly what we're doing, but you sort of muddle through, and it works.
And so I can see that you get the flexibility with what you're doing, but what are what does your work give you other than the kind of the practical thing?
My work gives me a great deal of satisfaction. I love tangible results. I love projects where there's a distinct beginning, middle, and end. So, for example, I do quite a number of large events. And so I love the fact that it's a big, bright, shiny object that lasts for a little while and then moves on. So there's that satisfaction at the end of the project that, hey, I did this. I put this thing together and it worked. And my client is satisfied. And that just gives me a great deal of personal satisfaction.
Yeah, that's great. And so if you were to meet someone who is struggling to do what they love, they are in a wheel and they're just kind of coming up against walls all the time. They know they want to, but they're in that fear place. What advice would you give them from where you are now?
The first thing that comes to mind is jump in, just do it. Maybe that's not the most practical advice, but honestly, looking back at the last 6.5, 7 years, becoming a consultant on my own was the best choice I ever could have made. Probably the best career choice I've ever made. So I encourage people just to do it. But on a more practical standpoint, I think you do have to look at, especially if you're relying just on yourself, you have to look at what are the numbers like. So how long can you last with no business? You've got to realize what the billing cycle might be in your own particular business, because you're not going to get a paycheck that first month. It's going to take a couple or 3 months to do that. So practically, you have to understand how long you can survive before you bring in money. And then I think, the business person in me says, have a business plan. Think about, who your audience is or who your clients are and how you're going to reach out to them. Because if you don't have those two pieces in mind, how can you bring in the business?
Yeah. I love what you're saying, because it's like it's marrying both the heart and the head, like logic and pragmatism.
It is. And I've often said that I couldn't have pursued this consulting career the way that I did if I didn't have somebody else in my home contributing that monthly income. And there are a lot of people out there who do it all by themselves, and I just am in awe and I'm envious of them. I think that I could do that, but I would have had to start out with that more practical plan than I did.
That's really helpful. Lisa, thank you so much. It's been
Oh,
great
you're welcome.
talking to you.
Thank you.